Pfizer is a well-known pharmaceutical company that's really making a comeback. For a couple of years, their financials have really looked strange. The reason for it is a couple of years ago, they were one of the two companies that started to develop and sell COVID vaccines. It was a windfall for Pfizer. They basically doubled the amount of revenue they had, and the company made a lot of money on COVID vaccines. Once COVID was over, it was really hard on their comparisons. When you compared revenue in 2023 to revenue in 2022 and 21, it looked terrible. It looked like the company was going out of business. But the reality was you just needed to extrapolate the COVID vaccines and see that the core business was still there. Nonetheless, investors are finicky and the stock was really sold off. Now, Pfizer is beginning to have reasonable comparisons and the stock market really likes it, at least judging from the last week. They announced their earnings and the stock is up nicely. I wanted to take a look at Pfizer and do my own analysis and determine what I think the company is worth. And I'll make a decision whether to buy more shares, sell my shares, or just hold my shares in Pfizer. Before I jump into analysis of Pfizer, let me remind you that I'm an individual investor, just sharing my journey as an investor, and I'm an investor in Pfizer. I'm not recommending you buy this stock or sell this stock, and this is not financial advice. Now let's look at the fundamentals of Pfizer. The company is a big cap company. $159 billion is the market cap for the company. They've been around for a long time and have established revenues of $58 billion. They have a nice forward PE of 12.67, nice and low. And they pay a really high dividend, which they're committed to paying, of 5.97. Really nice dividend. A number of analysts have looked at Pfizer and they have a buy rating on the stock. And they say it's 27% discounted. That's good to see. Overall, the stock for the past 5 days is up almost 10%, which is nice. But over the past year, it's down almost 27%. So you can see that it was selling off for a long time. Is this a time that it's going to begin to hit the bottom and go up? I sure hope so. I think it's a good company and has a good long-term future. If you look at their revenue, you can see where the COVID years, boy, they had revenues above $100 billion in 2022, and now they're down to 58. And that's the compare that I was talking about. It's really hard to compare to prior years that had all those COVID vaccines. I like looking at 2020 and 2021, where it was just the traditional Pfizer business. And in 2020, for example, they were a $41 billion company. And now they're up to $58 billion. So over the course of 4 years, the core business has grown quite a bit. So overall, I think the business is in good shape. When we look at cash flows, historically, this has been a very high cash flow generating company. And what's good about the COVID years is you can see that in 2021, they had cash from operations of $32.5 billion, which was a record. And they only had CapEx of $2.7 billion. That's close to $30 billion of free cash flow that they were able to put on the balance sheet, pay off debt, acquire another business, which they did. And then the following year, in 2022, they had free cash flow upwards of $27 billion. So in 2 years, they had $57 billion of free cash flow. That was phenomenal. But now we're back to more normal times, and it's down to cash from operations of $8.7 billion. So I'm going to use a more normalized free cash flow in my model, but I just wanted to point out that their balance sheet really benefited from really cash high years of 2022 and 2021. As we look at the forecast for this company, as mentioned, 15 analysts review Pfizer and they believe it's a good stock and it's actually discounted by 27% if you listen to those analysts. The earnings per share this year is expected to be $2.22. And the company guided that they're going to do at least $2.15. So that's a solid number. And I'm going to use a PE of 18 because right now they have a forward PE around 12. But I think that the likability of Pfizer has gone up. I think they're on their way up. So I'm going to go with 18. It's expected to grow nicely over the next couple of years. It's going to grow by 25% in 2025, 4.6% in 26, and then 5% in 27. So it looks like the prospects for Pfizer are looking up. Now, the dividend is one of the really nice features of this stock, and they pay almost 6%, which is great. And in their earnings, they basically stated that they want to keep the dividend and actually grow it. So they're expecting their stock price is going to go up, which will make that dividend yield come down. But for now, when you buy the stock, you're getting paid almost 6% dividend, which is great. And it's a very high payout ratio, but that's deceiving. And keep in mind, they have all that cash from the two COVID years anyway, which they could pay plenty of dividends for a long time with all that cash. I valued Pfizer using their free cash flows and discounting those free cash flows to today's value. I'm also going to look at their earnings per share and establish a value per share using their earnings per share. Now let's take a look at free cash flows first. And why do I use free cash flows? It's simple. If you look at the 10 most valuable companies in the world as an example, they all produce very high free cash flow. It is the way companies become more valuable. The more cash, free cash that a company delivers consistently, the more valuable the company gets. In this case here, I estimate that Pfizer is going to have about $9 billion of free cash in 2024. And I'm going to grow that free cash by 10% because they're on the way up. I think they have the COVID years behind them. They have some acquisitions that are already beginning to sell revenues and make money. So that's a good, comfortable number. It's actually a little bit conservative. Based on that growth rate and then growing all the cash flows after year 4 by 4%, I estimate that all those free cash flows are worth $246 billion when I discount them by 8%. They have $12.6 billion of cash on the balance sheet, and they have $71.8 billion of debt. When I add the cash and take away the debt, I get to an equity value of $187 billion compared to their market cap of $159 billion. So it's about an 18% discount on Pfizer using the free cash flow method. Earnings per share, they guided that they're going to do at least $2.15 per share. And I'm going to go with a PE of 18. They're going to be growing those free cash flows nicely. So I get a value per share of $44.51, but their current stock price is only $28.16. So there's about a 58% discount if we look at their earnings per share. When I blend the two, I get a 31% discount on Pfizer. I think Pfizer's on the way up. It's good to see that their financials are really getting consistent now and their business is going to be growing. So should I buy, hold, or sell Pfizer? Well, I'm going to make my decision on 3 factors. First, do I like the company? Do I want to be part owner? Second, do I like the balance sheet? And third, do I like the discount? First, about the company. I think the company historically has had great drugs that they sell, and it helps a lot of people. It's a very well-run pharmaceutical company. It's great they stepped up and found a vaccine that helped a lot of people during the COVID years as well. Overall, I think their management's excellent. I think their scientists are brilliant. So I really like the company. Next is the balance sheet. Their debt to EBITDA is under 3. And overall, they have very good cash on the balance sheet. So I like the balance sheet. I think it's in good health. They've acquired some businesses, Xeljanz being the biggest one, and they were able to do it with a lot of the cash that was on the balance sheet. They didn't have to take on a bunch of new debt. Last is a discount. The discount on this stock is 31%. That's a really good discount, especially since they pay a 6% dividend. So I'm going to keep buying shares in Pfizer. I'm actually going to buy big on this stock. It's good to see Pfizer in a positive light again. Again, this is historically has been a really good pharmaceutical company, and I think their best days are ahead of them. I really appreciate you watching the video, and I hope you found it interesting.